The bitter Wyoming wind howled across the open plains, driving snowflakes like tiny daggers against Hank Danielson's weathered face as he urged his horse through the gathering blizzard. February 1873 was proving to be one of the cruelest winters he'd seen in his 30 years, and he silently cursed himself for lingering too long in town after selling his cattle. Twilight was falling fast, and with it, the temperature plummeted to a bone-chilling depth that threatened man and beast alike. "Just a bit further, Thunder," he encouraged his faithful stallion, leaning forward against the punishing wind. "Home's just beyond that ridge." As they crested the hill overlooking the modest but sturdy ranch house that had been his solitary kingdom for the past 5 years, Hank's keen eyes caught an unusual shape huddled against his front porch. At first he thought perhaps a wolf or coyote had sought shelter, but as Thunder carried him closer, the unmistakable form of a human became clear. "Lord Almighty," Hank muttered, spurring Thunder to a faster pace. He dismounted before the horse had fully stopped, boots crunching in the fresh snow as he approached what appeared to be a woman curled protectively around something clutched to her chest. Her face was deathly pale, lips tinged blue, and for a moment Hank feared he'd found nothing but a corpse. But then she stirred, eyelids fluttering open to reveal eyes the color of summer violets, filled with fear and desperation. The bundle in her arms moved, and a tiny whimper emerged from within the layers of thin fabric. "A baby," Hank whispered in disbelief. The woman's cracked lips parted. "Please?" She managed before consciousness slipped away again. Without hesitation, Hank scooped up both mother and child. "You're both home now," he said firmly, as if his words alone could will life and warmth back into their frozen bodies. Inside the cabin, Hank worked with swift efficiency born from years of wilderness survival. He stoked the embers in the fireplace to a roaring blaze, stripped the unconscious woman of her wet clothing, averting his eyes as gentlemanly honor demanded, and wrapped her in every blanket he owned. The baby, a girl with a tuft of golden hair, whimpered weakly as he carefully examined her tiny body for frostbite. "SHH, little one," he soothed, marveling at how something so small could still cling to life after such exposure. "Your mama's going to be just fine." Throughout the night, Hank kept vigil, spooning broth between the woman's lips whenever she showed signs of waking, warming milk for the infant from his dwindling supply meant for coffee. By dawn, the blizzard had passed, but the stranger's fever had risen dangerously. "You can't die on me now," Hank told her, bathing her forehead with cool water. "Not after making it this far." 3 days passed in this manner, with Hank caring for both patients while neglecting his ranch duties. The baby proved surprisingly resilient, drinking eagerly from the makeshift bottle he'd fashioned from an old medicine dropper. But the woman wavered between fevered delirium and unsettling stillness. On the 4th morning, Hank awoke from his uncomfortable position in the chair beside the bed to find violet eyes studying him with clarity for the first time. "The baby," her voice was barely audible. "She's right here," Hank reassured her, lifting the sleeping infant from the drawer he'd padded with soft flannel to serve as a cradle. "Healthy as can be, thanks to your protection." Relief flooded her pale face. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving us. I'm Hank." "Hank Danielson," he offered, suddenly aware of his unshaven face and rumpled clothing. "Hannah," she replied weakly. "Hannah Keller." "Miss Keller, you're safe here," Hank said, careful to maintain a respectful distance now that she was conscious. "But I won't pry into your business. A woman and child traveling alone in winter, I reckon you have your reasons." Hannah's eyes clouded with memories. "My sister's child," she explained, gazing lovingly at the infant. "Emily, my sister died in childbirth 3 months ago. Her husband, he blamed the baby." She swallowed hard. "Said she wasn't natural, born with a caul. When I found him preparing to," her voice broke. "I took her and ran." Hank's jaw tightened. He'd heard such superstitions before but found them abhorrent. "You did right," he said simply. "He'll be looking for us," Hannah continued. "He has money, influence. I was heading to California where my aunt lives, but the stage broke down and the driver said the pass was closed anyway. I tried walking to the next town, but the storm. That was 10 miles at least, Hank said, astounded by her determination. Hannah looked down at her hands. I had no choice. Well, you're not going anywhere until spring now, Hank declared. The mountain passes won't clear before April, maybe May. You and little Emily are welcome to stay here. For the first time, Hannah's face brightened with a tentative smile. You're very kind, Mr. Danielson. Just Hank, he corrected, feeling an unexpected warmth spread through his chest at her smile. And it's no kindness. Gets lonely out here with just the cattle and thunder for conversation. As February gave way to March, Hannah regained her strength. Hank discovered she was 26, 4 years his junior, and had been a schoolteacher in Missouri, before journeying west to help her widowed sister through pregnancy. He found himself increasingly captivated by her quiet intelligence and the fierce protectiveness she showed toward Emily. Hannah, meanwhile, transformed Hank's Spartan cabin into something resembling a home. She insisted on taking over cooking duties once she could stand without dizziness, and Hank found himself looking forward to meals for the first time in years. I've never tasted beans this good, he declared one evening, helping himself to a second serving. Hannah laughed, the sound like spring water over stones. It's just beans, Hank, but I added a pinch of the dried herbs hanging in your shed. Those were there when I bought the place, he admitted sheepishly. Never knew what to do with them. Well, tomorrow I'll show you how to make biscuits that don't require a hammer to break apart. Their easy banter had become the highlight of Hank's days. In the evenings, after Emily was asleep, they would sit by the fire, Hannah mending Hank's clothes or reading aloud from one of the few books he owned, while he carved wooden toys for the baby or cleaned his rifle. One night, as a late March storm raged outside, Hannah closed the book she'd been reading and studied Hank's profile in the firelight. You never mentioned what brought you out here, all alone, she observed. Hank was silent for so long that Hannah feared she'd overstepped. Finally, he spoke, his deep voice soft with memories. I fought for the Union, came home to Illinois to find my family farm seized for taxes while I was away. My parents had died of influenza, nothing left for me there. He rubbed the back of his neck. Drifted west, worked cattle drives, saved enough to buy this place 5 years ago. It's not much, but it's mine. It's a good place, Hannah said sincerely. Solid, built to last. Their eyes met across the small space and something electric passed between them. Hannah, Hank began, but was interrupted by Emily's sudden cry. Hannah rose quickly. She's probably hungry. The moment passed, but the awareness remained, hovering between them like a promise neither was ready to voice. By early April, signs of spring appeared on the Wyoming range. Hank rode out daily to check on his cattle, teaching Hannah to handle basic chores around the ranch in his absence. She proved a quick study, soon able to feed the chickens, milk the cow, and even manage simple repairs. You're full of surprises, schoolteacher, Hank remarked one evening, watching her skillfully mend a tear in his leather saddlebag. My father believed girls should learn practical skills, she explained. He said education wasn't just about books. Wise man. He would have liked you, Hannah said softly, then looked away, suddenly shy. That night, as Hank lay on his bedroll on the floor, having insisted Hannah and Emily take his bed since their arrival, he allowed himself to imagine a future he'd never considered possible. Hannah moving about his kitchen, Emily taking her first steps across the puncheon floor, perhaps other children with Hannah's violet eyes and his stubborn chin. The longing for such a life struck him with unexpected force, but Hannah's brother-in-law was still searching for them. Twice in April, Hank returned from town with news of a well-dressed Easterner asking questions about a young woman traveling with an infant. He's offering a substantial reward, Hank told Hannah grimly after the second such report. Claims you kidnapped his child. Hannah's face went white. Howard will never stop. He believes Emily brought bad luck that she caused Rebecca's death. I've seen the hatred in his eyes when he looks at her. No court would give a child to such a man, Hank reasoned. Courts favor fathers, especially wealthy ones, Hannah countered. And Howard Preston has enough money to buy whatever testimony he needs. Her hands trembled. We should leave. You've done too much for us already. I won't bring trouble to your door. Hank crossed the room in 3 strides and took her hands in his. Listen to me, Hannah Keller. I've fought in a war, survived blizzards and droughts, and built this place with nothing but my own 2 hands. I'm not afraid of some city man with fancy clothes and ugly superstitions. Tears welled in Hannah's eyes. But no buts, Hank interrupted gently. This is your home now. Yours and Emily's. I'll not have you running scared across the country when you're safe here with me. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning neither had spoken aloud. With you, Hannah repeated, searching his face. Hank swallowed hard. I know it's not proper, me being unmarried and you living here. Folks in town are starting to talk, but I don't give a damn about their gossip. Nor do I, Hannah whispered. The thing is, Hank continued, his usual confidence faltering, I've grown mighty fond of having you here, both of you. And I was thinking, well, maybe we could make it proper. Hannah's breath caught. Are you asking? I'm making a terrible mess of this, Hank muttered, releasing her hands to rake his fingers through his hair. I had a speech planned, wanted to take you into town, buy you a proper ring first. A smile bloomed across Hannah's face. Hank Danielson, are you proposing marriage to me? I am, he said firmly, finding his resolve. I love you, Hannah. I love that little girl too, like she was my own blood. I want us to be a family if you'll have me. Hannah threw her arms around his neck, pressing her face against his chest. Yes, she breathed. Yes, I'll have you. Hank tilted her chin up and kissed her, tenderly at first, then with growing passion as she responded eagerly. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. I should have done that weeks ago, Hank admitted. Hannah laughed. I've been hoping you would. They were married by the circuit preacher the following Sunday, a simple ceremony with only the ranch hands as witnesses. Hank surprised Hannah with a delicate gold ring he'd purchased in secret on his last trip to town. It was my mother's, he explained as he slid it onto her finger. The only thing I saved from the old place. Hannah's eyes shimmered with tears. I'll treasure it always. Their happiness, however, proved short-lived. 3 days after the wedding, Hank spotted a cloud of dust approaching from the east, 3 riders, moving with purpose toward the ranch. Stay inside, he instructed Hannah, checking that his revolver was loaded. If there's trouble, take Emily and go out the back, head for the creek bed. Hannah nodded, clutching Emily to her chest, her face pale but determined. From the porch, Hank watched the riders approach. The man in the lead rode a sleek eastern thoroughbred that looked painfully out of place on the rugged Wyoming terrain. His fine suit and bowler hat marked him as a city dweller, but the men flanking him were clearly hired guns, their weathered faces and alert postures speaking of experience with violence. That's far enough, Hank called when they were within earshot. State your business. The well-dressed man reined in his horse. I'm Howard Preston from St. Louis. I'm looking for my sister-in-law, Hannah Keller, and my daughter, Emily. I have reason to believe they're here. No one by those names here, Hank replied evenly. Just me and my wife and our baby girl. Preston's eyes narrowed. Your wife, you say? That was quick work. I'm told she only arrived in February. My wife's name is Hannah Danielson, Hank said, emphasizing the surname, and our daughter is ours by law and love, if not by blood. A touching sentiment, Preston sneered. But that child is mine. Hannah stole her after my wife died in childbirth. That's not how I heard it, Hank countered. I heard a grieving man blamed an innocent baby for his wife's death, talked of getting rid of her because she was born with a caul. Preston's face darkened. The affairs of my household are none of your concern, cowboy. I've come for what's mine. And I'm telling you there's nothing here that belongs to you, Hank said, his hand resting casually near his holster. Now, I suggest you turn around and head back east before this gets unpleasant. The 2 men accompanying Preston shifted their hands toward their weapons. 3 against 1, Preston observed. Poor odds, Mr. Danielson. I've faced worse, Hank replied calmly. But before you do something foolish, you might want to look up at the ridge. Preston glanced up to see 4 mounted cowboys on the hill above the ranch house, rifles ready. Hank's ranch hands, alerted by the approaching riders, had taken up strategic positions. I also sent word to the sheriff this morning when we spotted you coming, Hank continued, bluffing slightly. Should be here any minute. Now, I don't know how things work in St. Louis, but out here, a man who tries to take another man's wife and child doesn't usually live long enough to regret it. Preston's confidence wavered visibly. This isn't over, he threatened, but there was uncertainty in his voice. It is if you've got any sense, Hank responded. That baby you claim to want, you haven't asked once about her welfare, haven't even said her name. What kind of father does that make you? For a moment, genuine grief flashed across Preston's face. Rebecca was everything to me. And Emily is all that's left of her, Hank said, his tone gentler. Your wife gave her life bringing that child into the world. Would she want you hunting her sister and threatening her daughter? Preston's shoulders sagged slightly. You don't understand. When I look at the child, all I see is Rebecca dying. That's your burden to bear, Hank told him, but it doesn't give you the right to harm that baby or the woman brave enough to protect her. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the spring wind rustling through the new grass. Finally, Preston straightened in his saddle. I want to see them, to know they're well. Hank considered this, then nodded slowly. Wait here. Inside, he found Hannah standing resolute, a rifle in her hands. It's Howard, she confirmed, having heard the exchange through the open window. He wants to see you both, Hank explained. I think he's wavering, Hannah. This might be our chance to end this peacefully. Hannah's grip tightened on the rifle. What if it's a trick? My men have him covered, Hank assured her. But I believe he needs to see you to see Emily as people, not just objects to possess. After a moment's hesitation, Hannah nodded. I'll speak with him. On the porch, with Hank's protective arm around her shoulders and Emily securely in her arms, Hannah faced her brother-in-law for the first time since her flight. Hello, Howard, she said steadily, Preston's eyes fixed on the baby. Emily, now nearly 6 months old, had Rebecca's delicate features and fair coloring. The resemblance was unmistakable. She looks like her, he said hoarsely. She does, Hannah agreed. She has Rebecca's smile, too, and her gentle nature. Preston dismounted slowly, approaching with caution under Hank's watchful gaze. When he stood before them, Hannah turned Emily slightly so he could see her face clearly. The baby studied the stranger with solemn curiosity. May I? Preston began, then faltered. Understanding, Hannah carefully transferred Emily into his awkward arms. The baby's face scrunched momentarily at the unfamiliar hold, but she didn't cry. A complex wave of emotions crossed Preston's face as he looked into his daughter's eyes for what was essentially the first time. Whatever darkness had gripped him seemed to recede, if only briefly, as Emily reached up to pat his cheek with her tiny hand. She deserves a chance at happiness, Hannah said softly. That's all Rebecca would have wanted for her. Preston handed the baby back, his movements stiff but gentle. You'll raise her well, he acknowledged, addressing both Hannah and Hank. Better than I could now. Relief washed over Hannah's face. Thank you, Howard. I'll have papers drawn up, Preston continued, his businessman's practicality reasserting itself. Legal adoption. No one will question your right to her then. Hank extended his hand. That's mighty decent of you, Mr. Preston. Preston hesitated, then shook it firmly. Take care of them, Danielson. With my life, Hank promised. As the 3 riders departed, Hannah leaned against her husband's solid frame. Is it really over? She whispered. Hank pressed a kiss to her temple. It is. We're safe now, all of us. That night, with Emily sleeping peacefully in her cradle beside their bed, Hank and Hannah lay entwined in each other's arms, whispering plans for their future together. We should expand the east pasture, Hannah suggested. For when we get more cattle next year, Hank chuckled. Already thinking like a rancher's wife. I'm thinking like your partner, she corrected. This is our home now, our legacy for Emily and any brothers or sisters that might come along. Hank's heart swelled at the thought. I never imagined having a family of my own, he admitted. After the war, I figured I'd live and die alone out here. Hannah propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face in the moonlight streaming through the window. Is this better than you imagined? Infinitely better, he assured her, pulling her down for a tender kiss. Every day with you and Emily is a gift I never thought to deserve. Over the years that followed, the Danielson ranch prospered. True to his word, Howard Preston sent adoption papers that made Emily legally their daughter. He even established a trust fund for her education, administered through a bank in Cheyenne with no strings attached. Hannah gave birth to twins, a boy and girl, the following spring, and 2 more sons in the years after. Emily grew into a beautiful young woman with her aunt's intelligence and her adoptive father's quiet strength on cold winter nights. Hank would often retell the story of how he found Hannah and Emily on his doorstep during that terrible blizzard. Half frozen they were, he'd say to his enthralled children. And I told them, you're both home now, best words I ever spoke, because they surely were. Hannah would smile across the room at him, their love having deepened with each passing season. The bitter cold that had nearly claimed their lives had instead forged the beginning of something precious, and enduring, a family built on courage, sacrifice, and the healing power of unconditional love. On their 20th wedding anniversary, as they stood together on the porch watching their children tend to the evening chores, Hank wrapped his arm around Hannah's waist. Any regrets? He asked, thinking of how different her life might have been had she continued to California as planned. Hannah shook her head, leaning into his embrace. Not one. This is exactly where we were meant to be. And as the Wyoming sunset painted the sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Hank Danielson thanked whatever twist of fate had brought a half-frozen woman and baby to his door on that snowy February night so many years ago, forever changing the course of all their lives.